Good evening and welcome to the Weekend Eve. I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice, and this is Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Coach 24, Darwin Penny, has finally made it back in town, but he has a date with his wife since he has not seen her for weeks. And knowing that, I totally understand him not being here. He did want to be here tonight, but Maria comes first, so unfortunately I will be doing the show again by myself with the little help of the producer and the man who runs the show, DJ Scattered, Mr. George Walker. Mr. Walker, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, it's been a great day, and I am doing very, very well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, a lot of things have been going on in the world of sports within the last 24, 48 hours. But I want to talk about the concert last night, which was REO Speedwagon and Night Ranger, which was at Starlight. And I took my son, my daughter, Michaela, and my son's daughter, which is my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter, Abigail, who just turned 15 last month. So this was a birthday gift for her. And then my other daughter's daughter, Evelyn. And so I had 2 free tickets because I had a couple of people who could not make it at the last moment. So I decided to take her to roughly her first concert. Now, she said that she went to a Christian concert, but when Night Ranger started playing the music and it was really loud, she was covering her ears. So I believe that last night was truly her first concert. So, but it was amazing. It was awesome. It was rocking. Night Ranger was playing great. Jack Blades, who is the guitarist and vocalist for Night Ranger, was singing some of Damn Yankees songs with that had Ted Nugent and Tommy Shaw of Styx. So he played some of those too. And then REO Speedwagon came in afterwards and was just totally just rocking it out. We were having a blast. My granddaughter, Evelyn, though, it took her about 2.5 hours to finally get into it before she started dancing around and enjoying it. And saying that, it rained for about 15-20 minutes during the concert. And so there was a ton of people that were just getting up and going. And some of them I could truly understand. There were people a little bit older than me, not as healthy as me, had some health issues, walking canes and stuff like that. So I totally understood that. My kids and myself and my grandkids, we stayed there and we were just totally just having a blast. So I just wanted to say to my kids rock big time. My daughter just hugged me and thanked me for for taking her, and my son did the same thing, and my two granddaughters also did that. But my daughter was just totally getting going. She's 25 years old, but man, I just try to tell them this is what I grew up with. So this, I truly enjoy all this. So to say that, we will get on to sports now. Now, 816-599-6893 is the phone number. If you would like to call in and speak your piece, or if you have a question, feel free to do so. Now, I am going to, and we didn't discuss this last week because we were talking about other things going on. So the Central Missouri, or Central Midwest, and I always say Missouri, so Central Midwest Football League had their games this past weekend. And so here were the final scores of these games of this past weekend. The Midwest Titans, who was third in their division, lost to the Joplin Crusaders. And then you had the Columbia Vipers edging out the Northwest Arkansas Generals 18-12. And then you had the number 1 Oklahoma Bears outscoring the Arkansas Wildcats 45-12. Central Illinois Cougars beat the Kansas City Panthers at home 33-0. East Central Missouri Eagles, which they are, even though it says East Central, it is still in St. Louis. They edged out the Springfield Punishers 24-12. The Missouri Cyclones edged out the St. Louis Falcons 15-12. And then the Arkansas Refs, outscored the Coaches 2-0. And then the Heat outscored Jamarcus McGee's Cleats 14-0. So I don't know about that, but that was funny, so I had to definitely say that. So the rankings after Week 7 of the CMFL: number 1, Oklahoma. Number 2, Joplin Crusaders, even though they have a loss, jumped ahead of the Missouri Cyclones after they squeaked by with a victory. Jumped to number 2, and Oklahoma Bears have 6 number 1 votes, and Joplin Crusaders are in second, but Missouri Cyclones still have a vote, a number 1 vote, but they drop to number 3. Then number 4 is the Wichita Skyhawks. Number 5 is the Central Illinois Cougars. 6 is the Tulsa Gators. 7 is the St. Louis Falcons. 8 is the Midwest Titans. 9, the Columbia Vipers. And 10, the East Central Missouri Eagles. So, now, with that, we are going to go to the leaderboard for the highest scoring team, or I've got the defense right now, so let me get to the offense. So the offense, number 1, averaging 32.7 points per game and scoring 229 points, is the Oklahoma Bears. Number 2 is the Joplin Crusaders with 222 points. Columbia Vipers 188, Central Illinois Cougars 179, Missouri Cyclones 158, Wichita Skyhawks 150, the East Central Missouri Eagles 140, the Midwest Titans 131, St. Louis Falcons 117, and the St. Joseph Swarm is at 91. So now we will move to the defensive side. Excuse me, my nose is itchy. But I got it taken care of. So the number 1 defense, the Skyhawks has only allowed 28 points in 6 games. They are number 1 with 28 points. The Missouri Cyclones is second with 44. Oklahoma Bears are third with 47. The Tulsa Gators are tied with the East Central or the Central Illinois Cougars with 62. Number 6 is the Joplin Crusaders at 76. Columbia Vipers 84. The East Central Missouri Eagles 113. St. Joseph Swarm 125, and 10 is the Midwest Titans tied with the St. Louis Falcons. Now they only have 101 points given up, but they had a couple of forfeits, so I believe that they have played 5 games. I think this is based after 5 or 6 games, so that's why they are lower than that. So, but, and if the playoffs would happen today, in the Great Plains Conference, the Oklahoma Bears would be the number 1 seed. Joplin Crusaders would be the number 2 seed. And then the 3 seed would be the Wichita Skyhawks, and they would play the 6th seed in the St. Joseph Swarm. And in the other wild card, the Oklahoma Gators or Tulsa Gators, the number 4 seed would play the number 5 seed Midwest Titans. So we would move over to the Gateway Conference. The Missouri Cyclones is the number 1 seed. Number 2 is the Columbia Vipers. And then you have the number 3 seed, which is Central Illinois Cougars, would play the 6th seed Arkansas Wildcats. And in the other wild card game, the East Central Missouri Eagles, the 4 seed, would play host to the St. Louis Falcons. So, now, saying all this, it looks like these records are pretty much going to be set with the fact that possibly the Kansas City Panthers still have a shot at the playoffs. Now, they have a home game next week, and I believe it is against Wichita. I want to say it's the Wichita Warcats. And then the Titans this weekend are playing their final game of the season. So these next 2 weekends are the final weekends, even though the Panthers do not play next week. Do not play next week. They play this week. Titans do not play this week, but they will play next week. And the playoffs will start the Saturday after the 4th of July. And the championship game is August 3rd at St. Pius High School. So if anybody would like to go, that is August 3rd. That is on a Saturday, August 3rd at St. Pius High School. And that is just north of the river. I believe it's off 29 highway, I think it's 29 or 35, one of those 2 highways. And it's just north of North Kansas City. And you will see some great football. And yes, I will be announcing the game. So you definitely need to come and hear me. So with that, we've got all that going on. Now, let's go to the NBA. And the Boston Celtics on Tuesday night finally took care of business. They beat the Dallas Mavericks. And, the Boston Celtics outplayed Dallas the first 3 games. And you knew, even though Boston had the second longest road winning streak of all time behind the 2001-2002, the Los Angeles Lakers, they had 9 straight games. You knew that Dallas was going to come back and beat them. And they did. And they beat them badly. They beat them 134 to 86. 86. So they won by like 48 points, 38 points, something like that. And the funny thing is that after the 4 games, they were trying to say that Dallas had outscored the Boston Celtics. Well, when you win 1 game by 38 points, it is going to look like that. I've got a couple of these CMFL games where the teams won 62-20. 42 points makes a big difference. And here's the other thing: the Boston Celtics and the Boston Celtics held Dallas under 100 points in all four of the wins. They ended up winning 4-1, and with that, it is 32 straight games that Boston Celtics have won a playoff game under when they have given up under 100 points, and that goes all the way back to 2019. So the Celtics, which had the best record in the NBA, which had the best defense in the NBA, just proved their point. They just had one bad game, and you had a player that was mad because everybody was dogging on him after the third game, where he had picked up 2 late fouls in the fourth quarter, fouled out with over 4 minutes left in the game, and you turn around and everybody is criticizing you, and rightfully so. You were playing terrible. Kyrie Irving, who actually handled everything with class, played terrible, with the exception of Game 3 and Game 4. And Game 4, I just say it was a fluke, just for the fact that they wasn't going to get swept, and everybody knew that. I knew that going into that game, that Dallas was going to win. The Boston Celtics road streak was going to end. Dallas was going to win because they wanted more games. They really wanted 7 games. It wasn't going to go 7 games, even though I did predict with Marvin Durant, who is my, which I am co-hosting on the show On the Record, which I will talk about that a little bit later. But he had picked Dallas in 7, and I picked the Celtics in 7. So with that, and here is an ironic thing. Sam Cassell, who played for the Houston Rockets in the 90s, that won the 2 titles in between Michael Jordan's 6 straight championships, because he won 6 straight championships. He just dropped out for a couple of years to play baseball, do whatever he needed to do. He was going through a rough time. And, I don't care what you say. I don't care how big of a person you are. Michael Jordan is the arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. You lose your father, and the fact that not only did he lose him, but it was pressed all over the place. Everybody knew that he lost his father. You are gonna have some setbacks, just a little bit, and so he had to get away. He decided to try playing baseball, and it's all good. But saying that, the Celtics, like I said, Sam Cassell won 2 titles at Houston, and then in 2008 he played for the Celtics, which was, I believe, one of his last seasons he played. Won a title with the Celtics in 2008, and then in 2024 he won a title with the Celtics as a coach. So that was pretty cool. That is 16 years in between. But saying that, everybody's wondering, if Boston was so great, how come that they won only 2 titles since 1986? And here is the reason. June 17th was the 38th anniversary that Maryland superstar Lynn Bias, who was selected by the Boston Celtics as the number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft, which was held in New York City. That's where they always have it, at Madison Square Garden. Red Auerbach, he did a phenomenal job of getting this trade down. So he was the Celtics president and general manager, had dealt guard Gerald Henderson and cash to the Seattle Supersonics for the pick in 2000 or in 2000 in 1984, which ironically was the year that I graduated high school. So 2 years later, so after the draft, Boston drafts Lynn Bias. Larry Bird is just beyond himself because he's like, man, we're going to win title after title after title now. And we keep playing the Lakers, and the Lakers keep edging us because during the 80s, Boston won 3 titles, and the Lakers won 5 titles. So they pick up this guy who was the player of the year in the NCAA. I mean, he was a phenomenal player. He was a 6'8" forward, and my gosh, I know that if he played even half as good as people advertised for him, they would have tried to compare him to Michael Jordan. Well, after that, Bias returned home to Maryland and had discussions with Reebok regarding a 5-year endorsement deal. Just 2 days later, he was taken to Leland Memorial Hospital in Riverdale, Maryland, where he was pronounced dead at 8:55 in the morning of cardiac arrhythmia related to the usage of cocaine. He was 22 years old, and I remember that day, and I remember the situation very, very well because I really wanted Houston, who had played the Boston Celtics, to beat the Celtics. And so Len Bias went to a party, and supposedly he had never taken drugs. He had always kept himself in superior shape, everything else. Well, the one time he tried some cocaine, and it killed him. Just trying it once. Everybody says, oh, it was just one time. Well, this thing right here, it happened one time. And because of that, it shut the Boston Celtics down for the next 38 years because they've only won 2 titles since 1986. 1986, they had 16 titles. They had way more than anybody else. Everybody, I don't think the Lakers even had titles won in double digits. Boston Celtics literally were doubling the Los Angeles Lakers, and I want to say they had like 9 titles, but 4 of them was with the Minnesota Lakers, which is where the team originated, which is why they're called the Lakers, because in Minneapolis there's a lot of lakes, so that's why they were called the Lakers. So for anybody who did not know that, you just got a little bit of history lesson. But saying that, it really cost the Boston Celtics, and they were never the same again. And they were never even heard from. Larry Bird retired shortly after the Dream Team in '92. They were just getting average players when normally they were getting usually the best players. They usually had, they usually could pick up guys that came from other teams, and they gelled great together. Casey Jones was the coach at that time, and he was just totally just kicking butt with them. But saying that, when you do something like that, people now are vaping, instead of smoking, they're vaping. And it's like, oh, it's no big deal. We'll be fine. Well, you don't know that. And this guy was proof, a phenomenal athlete that he was, tried it once, and it killed him for it. So like I said, I remember seeing him and a lot of these kids. I mean, my children were not born at this time, so that should tell you something. So these young kids, who's growing up with LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving and Luke Doncic and everything else like that, they did not see what that happened. So congratulations to the Celtics. Now, will they continue on winning? Will they have a team that they can do that and continue on winning? because right now the Lakers, which normally would be the team that would always vie against them for the championships, they're the two greatest franchises in NBA. They just they are not doing very well. Now, saying this, they're talking about Jason Tatum redoing his contract because he's got a 2-year, $70 million contract, and I know $70 million. Could you handle $70 million, Mr. Walker, if you got a 2-year contract?
I definitely could. I'd like to try it.
There you go. There you go. You know, everybody talks about when you win Powerball, a lot of bad stuff happens to you and everything else. Well, you know what? I'd like to try that. I definitely would love to see if that is true and if that works. So, yes, I am willing to make that effort. I am willing to do that for the people and let them know, you know, exactly what happens when you get a whole bunch of money.
But like you say, if I was 22, 23 years old and got $70 million, it would be dangerous.
No, it would. I'm telling you, it would. I think it's dangerous for me at 58 years old to have $70 million. But I definitely would love to try that. So, but with him, you know, it was just a tragedy. So now, saying this, you know, we always talk about the NBA being the America game and all that. Well, the MVP, I believe, started for the most valuable player in the NBA. I believe it started in 1960. And so from 1960 to 2018, only twice did a non-American win the MVP. That was Steve Nash both times. Yes, he was Canadian. But since 2019, no Americans have won the MVP. Giannis I can't even say his name right now. Giannis from the Milwaukee Bucks, and the player on Denver has won it 3 straight years. So you have all the foreign players coming in and taking over. So it's not a bad thing, but we talk about it being the American game. And so, well, right now it doesn't look like it's America's game. So, with that, we are at halftime on Any Given Sunday on KUAW. I'm Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice. I have Coach 24, Darwin Penny, and Mr. George Walker, DJ Scatter behind the scenes. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we will start the second half of Any Given Sunday. right, we are back with the second half of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Coach 24, Darwin Penny, who is not here tonight. DJ Scatter, George Walker behind the scenes, and I am Brian Crest, the Awesome Voice. So we were talking about the NBA, and I was telling Mr. Walker a fact about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now, LeBron James not this past season, but the season before, overtook Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to become the number one leading scorer in NBA history. And I was saying that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had the record for 39 years, which he retired, I believe it was in 1988, 1989. I can't remember right off the top of my head what year, but he was the leading scorer in NBA history. It took 39 years to get LeBron James to overtake him. And saying that, everybody talks about LeBron James is the greatest scorer of all time. This is why he's the GOAT and Michael Jordan isn't, because Michael Jordan, it doesn't have the scoring record. Well, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did all this making one three-pointer. LeBron James cannot say that. LeBron James has hundreds of three-pointers made. And I don't have the numbers. It would take me a little bit to come up with it. But saying that, if he did not have any three-pointers, then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would still have the record. And so we were talking a little bit about Caitlin Clark. Well, Caitlin Clark has the scoring record in college basketball, men's and women. And I know the woman that passed it. I just can't think of her name right now. But the men's was a guy named Pete Maravich, who played for the LSU Tigers in the early 70s. And so he averaged 44 points. In fact, I think he averaged like 43 points in his 3 years of playing. Now, saying that, he could not play his freshman year because at that time in college football, college basketball, in all the sports, you could not play as a freshman. You were on the team, but you could not play. So Pete Maravich didn't play his freshman year, and then he played his last 2 years, averaging roughly, we'll just say 44 points a game. Now, if he would have been playing in the era of the 3-point land, and they would have counted every shot he made behind the 3-point range, Pete Maravich would average 58 points a game. And his record would be so far out there that Caitlin Clark could not catch it. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese combined could not catch it. So, but we're talking about two eras. You're talking about, people that I knew, and I didn't even know who he was at that time. So in the early 70s, I was like 5 or 6 years old. So I did not know who he was until I was later in the 70s when he was playing for the the New Orleans Jazz, which is why the Utah Jazz is called the Jazz, because they were formerly from New Orleans. So another bit of information for you youngsters to learn. And then he finally got to play on a championship team in '86 with the Boston Celtics. And I don't remember if it was '86 or if it was '81, but he did win a championship with one of the two teams, and I know it wasn't both of them. I know Bill Walton won it in '86. He was actually number 5, his jersey number, and played on that team. And I remember him well. He was the 6th man. He would come off the bench and provide some great minutes, resting up the other starters. But Pete Maravich, he did play for the Celtics and did end up winning a championship, which I believe, like I said, was I believe 1981 because the Celtics won in 81, in 86, and I want to say 83. No, it wasn't 83 because that was Philadelphia. But they didn't win 3 championships back to back, but they did win them in the 80s, and outside of Detroit Pistons winning the titles in 88 and 89, it was either the Lakers or the Celtics that won the championship game. And here's even another stat. There was only 4 teams in the 1980s that played in the finals. That was the Houston Rockets, that was the LA Lakers, that was the Boston Celtics, and that was the Detroit Pistons. So, I mean, it was pretty much there was domination in the NBA at that time. It's not like it now where you try to make it parity, which is not a bad thing because it allows your team that has been doormats for years the opportunity to come in the season and say, I have a chance of winning. Unlike, like saying the Royals, they have been doormats since roughly 2017, because 2016 they weren't doormats, but 2016 they weren't. But 2017 they started, and all the way up till last year, and before they finally started playing some decent ball. But saying that, Pete Maravich. So that's the change between these, the styles, because at that time you needed a center. You needed a center that would take the ball and make layups and everything else. Well, you don't need that as much anymore. You can have three guards and 2 big forwards, because now these 7-footers can play power forward in the NBA. And so you don't necessarily need a center. But I personally love centers, but that's because I am old. And as you would say, or as my kids would say, yes, Dad, you are old. They love me to death, but they would tell me I'm old. But that is, that's just the thing. It's also in football. In football in the 70s, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you were running the football. Running the football was very, very important. And even to a point, it is important in today's game, but it's also alienated because of the passing game. You've got Patrick Mahomes throwing to wide receivers. You've only got, on your team, you've got 6, 7 wide receivers. You have tight ends. If you don't have a good tight end, then you definitely need great wide receivers. So the Chiefs have a great tight end in Travis Kelce, and you're trying to get a couple of extra tight ends, but you've got all these skill players, and the running backs, they do run the ball a little bit. Yeah, Pacheco has been running the ball, but you also need a running back who can catch the ball, which why Walter Payton was such a phenomenal player in playing in the 70s and the 80s. He was the best, and he could catch the ball, he could run the ball, and he could throw the ball. So, but saying that, now I'm going to get into, we were talking about Oakland, and we were talking about we're now going to talk about the Royals. The Royals were playing the Oakland Athletics. It may be, and today may be the last time ever that Kansas City will play a baseball game in Oakland, especially at the Oakland Coliseum, because it is a dump. But there are so many memorable games that were played out there, and so Oakland, the city of Oakland, and not necessarily people, but the leaders in Oakland has did a horrible job and a travesty to the Oakland fans by not trying to get a stadium for the Raiders and for the Athletics. And because of that, the Athletics are going to move to Sacramento, and then they will eventually move to their permanent spot in Las Vegas. And the Raiders are in Las Vegas already. Now, saying that, growing up, I love the name Oakland Raiders because I could hate the Oakland Raiders, but you couldn't hate the Los Angeles Raiders. Yeah, you still did, and they were still playing the Chiefs and the Raiders. They were still a rivalry and everything else. But now you've got the Las Vegas Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs, and it just does not fit. I like the Oakland Raiders. I like the fact that even to a point where Marty Schottenheimer was telling his players, leave your helmet on. They will throw batteries at you. I mean, that's what made football football. And today, with the Royals playing the Athletics, this could be possibly the last time that you will see any professional sport, and I'm talking about the main sports, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, that somebody will play in there. And also, it is also the last multiple stadium in the league, because the Raiders and the A's both played on that field. And Kansas City at one time, they had baseball at Municipal Stadium. And then the Chiefs were also playing there until Truman Sports Complex took over and made them two beautiful separate stadiums. And yes, at some other time we will talk about what's going on with the possible movement or staying in Kansas City with the stadiums. But the Royals today ended up beating the A's after losing the first two games of the series. So they had played 12 games, the previous 12 games, against first place teams. They played the Indians, they played Cleveland. Yeah, it's the Guardians, not the Indians, but to me, they'll always be the Indians. The Mariners, the Yankees, and the Dodgers. So that was a pretty rough schedule. And they did pretty decent. They never got swept. In fact, they've only been shut out twice this year, and they have never been swept in a series. That's amazing, considering a team that lost 106 games last year. You could imagine that they could have lost, a couple of series where they were swept, and that's not a big deal. But this year they have done that. They have kept from getting swept. They didn't get swept by the Yankees, even though they completely dominated them at at Kauffman Stadium, for the 4 games. But the Royals still fought back and beat them. And today it took 3 home runs, one from Bobby Witt, which was the game winner, and 2 from Freddie Fermin, who played DH today because Salvador Perez was the catcher. But I can see Fermin getting a lot of playing time now, because the fact that he's batting near 300, he's batting very well, and we needed somebody to replace Massey, who got injured, was gone, and the Royals had struggled a little bit. And then you get Walker back this weekend, which is also the reason why the Royals have dropped from being the number 5 starting pitching rotation. They were 5th in ERA, and now they have dropped to the middle of the pack. They were like first or second. I think they were second behind Philadelphia in quality starts, and that has dropped a little bit. But now we're going to start getting some of our players back, and we will be at full strength, and now we will see how we will play, because these next 29, well, started with Oakland. The next 29 of the 32 games, 33 games, are against teams under 500, with the exception of the Guardians, who will play a 4-game series next weekend at Kauffman Stadium. So you guys need to make sure you get out there and support the Royals and be there for them. Now, I know that they're going to Texas. They're probably getting on a plane tonight going to Texas, and then they will play the Rangers for a 3-game series. But saying that, they had an opportunity to try to at least sweep the A's. The A's are those doormats that I was talking about earlier, but they turned around and ended up losing to them the first 2 games, and then they finally had to squeak out a game today. But the most important game that's going on is the game tonight, and that is the game at Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama, which is the birthplace of Willie Mays. And so this game, they were really hoping Willie Mays will be there. And indirectly, he will be there, but he will only be there in spirit, because yesterday was no, it was Tuesday. It was Tuesday he passed away. Hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. He passed away. Yeah, he passed away. Yeah, he passed away Tuesday, and so I am wearing my jersey to support him, because the stadium that is in Birmingham was the home to the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro Leagues Baseball League, and it is the oldest major league stadium still standing. I mean, it's older than, and I think Yankee Stadium may have challenged them for the oldest, but now Yankee Stadium is down and they got a new stadium. But older than Fenway, older than Wrigley. This is the oldest stadium. It is 114 years old, so it was 1910 that the stadium came out. And so, and you talk about players that came out and played, 181 Hall of Fame players have played on that field, from Ty Cobb to Josh Gibson to Satchel Paige to Babe Ruth to Stan Musial. I could just keep going and going all day long. And so tonight you have the San Francisco Giants, which is perfect because, you scheduled this in the before the season started, when you were going to play and everything. They are going to play the St. Louis Cardinals. Nobody knew that Willie Mays would not be around, but they were hoping that he would have been there at the game to watch the game, and it really would have been a great tribute if he could have just made it to that one last game. Now, Darwin Penny, Coach 24, is the reason. Coach 24 is the reason why he wears 24, is because of Willie Mays. And I'm not gonna tell you guys his feelings on that, because I think he should tell you that. But that was his favorite player. That was the player he wanted to emulate. And you get basketball, you talk about the GOAT, right, Mr. Walker? You get the GOAT. You get people going Michael Jordan. You get Will Chamberlain. You get Bill Russell. You get LeBron James. You get football. You get Tom Brady. You get now Patrick Mahomes. They're talking about the GOAT. You've never really heard about the GOAT in baseball. But I think that you would agree with me, if there was anybody that was the GOAT of Major League Baseball, it would be Willie Mays. And people still talk about, from 1954, which was 12 years before I was born, that he made the catch. But as Willie Mays said, it wasn't the catch, it was the throw.
The throw.
Because It was the World Series, 1954. It was the Giants versus the Cleveland Indians. And so it was, I want to say, the eighth inning. And so Vic Wentz hits a shot, which in today's game, it would have been out of the ballpark. It wouldn't even been close. But because Ebbets Field was so huge, Willie Mays ran almost 500 feet to catch this ball, and nobody thought that he would get it. And then he caught it with the ball over his head, catches the ball, but everybody says, oh, that was the amazing catch. That wasn't the amazing part. The amazing part was the throw. He turned around immediately and threw the ball into the infield, because you had a guy named Larry Doby, who was the first black American League player who played for Cleveland, was at second base. If Willie Mays just caught the ball and took any time whatsoever to throw it back in, Larry Doby would have scored from second base. And with that, the Cleveland Indians would have won the first game. The Giants would not have been able to take the game into 10 innings, win in 10 innings, and then end up sweeping the Cleveland Indians. So it was the throw, not the catch, that made it even more incredible. But here was the thing. He had 12 here's his stats. I've got his stats for him. He had 660 home runs. Now, he was the second player in Major League history to hit over 600 home runs. He was the second player to do that. Babe Ruth was the first, obviously 40 years prior to that. He had 3,293 hits, so he had almost 3,300 hits. He had 1,909 RBIs. He had 2 NL MVPs, which, in my personal opinion, I don't know how he only had 2 MVPs. He had 339 stolen bases. He had 12 gold gloves. And here's the thing. They didn't start gold gloves until he was already in the league. If they would have started at least in 1951, he would have had roughly 4 more, or about 16 golden gloves. And he was a all-star 24 times. There was only one person who was better than him in making it to the All-Star game, and that was Hank Henry Aaron, who is the all-time home run king. Yes, you heard what I said, and I will stick to it. Yes, I know you got to put Barry Bonds in there, and not to diminish Barry Bonds' accomplishments, but to me, Hank Aaron's records would be much better. And then, the Giants ended up moving, just like the Dodgers, moving from Brooklyn and New York all the way to California, and playing in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and played in a horrible stadium that he didn't get a lot of home runs. And here's the other thing. He played in Ebbets Field, which was it has a bigger field than what Detroit Tigers have right now. Could you imagine if he played in a stadium like New York, the New York Giant or New York Yankee Stadium, Chicago Cubs Wrigley Field Stadium all the time? He would have had roughly 800 home runs, and he was just the amazing player. So getting back to my GOAT, in baseball, there has been nobody that you always say is the GOAT. You never say Babe Ruth is the GOAT, or Stan Musial is the GOAT, or Carl Yastrzemski, or anybody, or even Hank Aaron as the GOAT. But if you had to pick somebody who was the GOAT, it was Willie Mays. He was a phenomenal athlete, and sometimes you don't realize how phenomenal a player is until, unfortunately, he passes away. And then you realize just how phenomenal he was. And I realized that he was phenomenal, but I still did not get it as much as I should have. And, you know, being born in Birmingham, Alabama, and this field and this stadium and this game, which I believe is being played right now as we speak. I think they said that it's, well, it's where Martin Luther King Jr. also preached at the 16th Street Baptist Church. So, I mean, you've got a lot of history there. But the worst part was it took them forever before you could get whites and blacks to play together. And that was sad. And so they're doing the right things now. And so that's why I am wearing my jersey that I am wearing that has all the teams from the Negro Leagues. It is just one of those. It's one of those travesties that now, just thinking about it, watching the game, it's just so beautiful. And the fact that I looked at it before I left to come to the show, and it had the big 24 right behind home plate, you know, for the honor of Willie Mays. And so, rest in peace, Willie Mays. You are the GOAT, and you were a phenomenal player. And I don't know more what to say. I know I can speak forever. But with that, we are at the end of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. And we got Coach 24, Darwin Penny, and George Walker, DJ Scatter. And I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a phenomenal weekend. I love you, Dad.